Okay. Right. So now to move on to our first speaker, we have Nicky Britton-Williams from Kent Wildlife Trust. Over to you, Nicky.
Thank you, Laura. So I've got a couple of slides, which is mostly pretty pictures. So I'm going to share that with you all. That will mean you'll be able to see me, but I won't be able to see you. So if anyone needs anything from me, then shout, because I won't see you otherwise. So my plan is just to give you a really brief overview of why the site is so special in terms of its biodiversity interest. So have a look at the habitats and the species, and then just a bit of an overview of what sort of Kent Wildlife Trust are doing alongside other environmental NGOs. So if I kick off. Right, so well, as I'm sure you're all already aware, the bulk of the development of the London resort is focused on the Swanscombe Peninsula. So the peninsula has an industrial past and has been subject to extensive human interference and industrial use, including aggregate, cement works and gas works, with sort of cement work waste being spread across the site, as well as being used as a landfill site. So previously developed sites such as this are commonly referred to as brownfield sites. And that's a term that we're seeing used in sort of the London resort companies' applications and media. And this creates a picture of a landscape that's just completely devoid of nature. But you just need to visit the site or looking at these images to know that this is sort of far from the truth. Nature's quite clearly reclaimed the peninsula and has created a wildlife-rich brownfield site, which includes flower-rich grasslands, coastal habitats, areas of bare ground, which are vital for insects, scrub and wetlands. The biodiversity value of these brownfield sites is often underestimated, and because of that, these sites are under threat across the entire UK, but particularly in the Thames estuary. We've lost over half of our wildlife-rich brownfield sites to development already in the Thames estuary. So we need to work really hard to make sure that this isn't another one of those situations. So this intricate mosaic of habitats that has arisen because of the sort of industrial past of this site means that this site is host to a huge array of species. As I'm sure people have heard, invertebrates are sort of stealing the headlines when it comes to the Swanscombe Peninsula. There's around 1,500 species of invertebrate that have been found on the peninsula. 250 of those are of conservation concern. So that's those which are red data book species or classified as being nationally scarce. And actually the number of species found at the Swanscombe Peninsula is the largest number of nationally scarce invertebrate species found on any site in the UK. And this is why the site is nationally important for invertebrates. And so I'm sure that, I don't think I've got a little cursor going, but on the top left, we've got our distinguished jumping spider, which is found in only one of 2 locations in the whole of the UK. The other
sorry to interrupt, Nicky.
Okay.
Actually, I don't. Is it just me? I don't think I can see the slide. I'm not sure if it's just me because of.
No, she's not. She's not screen sharing.
I can't see him.
No, you're not sharing your screen to everybody.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, everyone.
Let me just make sure I've allowed access.
No, that's... Oh, no. Well, hold on. Let me grab my little pictures up again. You've all been looking at my face instead, which isn't as fun.
Oh, it's been interesting.
Yes.
Right, share screen. Oh, sorry. I know that's caught on video as well.
Oh, lovely.
We're there now.
That's
Right,
it.
so can you see the PowerPoint or can you see my presenter view?
We can see
I can see.
the
I can see
PowerPoint now.
really well.
That's
Okay.
lovely.
Wonderful. Well, sorry, everyone. Well, let me show you my pictures again, because I did put all these together for you.
Thanks.
There we go. So well, these were the pictures to accompany my first slide. Some of these I'm sure everyone's very familiar with from various social media campaigns with our grassland and wetland habitats found on site. So, and then, right, so back to species. And yeah, so everyone can see the, Laura, just to check, you can see the PowerPoint, not the presenter view with my scrappy notes on it. Is that right?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant.
Thank you.
Good, won't embarrass myself further then. Right, so yeah, so top left is our distinguished jumping spider. So yeah, as I was saying, they are found on only 2 sites in the whole of the UK, and the other of which is West Thurrock Marshes, which is also under threat of development. So that tends to jump out as the headline species because of the scarcity. But as well as our distinguished jumping spider, we've got the sea aster mining bee and the brown banded carder bee, along with a whole host of other invertebrates. And so, and this site, because of the sheer number of invertebrates and the sheer number of scarce invertebrates, the Swanscombe Peninsula is sort of categorised as being nationally important for invertebrates. So as well as this, we've got, oops, sorry, excuse me. Yep. So the site is also host to a massive number of breeding birds. We've got 82 species of breeding bird recorded there, including marsh harrier, kingfisher, nightingale, and skylark. As well as wintering birds such as redwing and skylark, which depend on the habitats of the peninsula for foraging and roosting over the winter period. We've got a nationally important array of plant species, including nationally scarce man orchids, as well as exceptional populations of reptiles, amphibians, water vole, otter, dormouse, bats. We've got absolutely everything on the peninsula. So whilst I've given you these massive long lists of what we've got there, what I haven't done really is to put this into the context of looking at how this site fits in compared to the UK's national wildlife sites. And when you do, it becomes immediately obvious that the Swanscombe Peninsula is the most wildlife rich brownfield site in the whole country. It's home to more red listed and conservation concerned species than any other brownfield site in the UK. But despite this, it's not been given the same protection as other sites. For example, Canvey Wick, which has been designated as a site of special scientific interest, which is one of our nationally designated sites on the basis of its invertebrate assemblage. So because we feel so strongly about the importance of this site, alongside bug life and the RSPB, we've written to Natural England to call for the Swanscombe Peninsula to be designated as a site of special scientific interest. Hopefully some of you saw the various press releases, and it was picked up really well in the media as well. So this call was supported by 77 current and former senior staff from Natural England and from environmental organisations. So it was really well supported, and we're hoping that we will get a decision back on that by the end of April. So that would be a massive step towards sort of supporting our sort of objections to the London Resort development. It won't necessarily stop it dead in its tracks, and we can always go into that more in the comments later, but it will be a really, really useful tool if we can get that designation. And so just because we're sort of asked to touch on what it is that we're doing to support the campaign. So there's obviously the Site of Special Scientific Interest designation that I've just mentioned. We've also written fairly lengthy comments to the London Resort during the consultation stage, which has obviously been and gone, and quite a number of those comments have actually been taken on board, and we do need to look in detail at how the London Resort has come back to us on those comments. We've met with the London Resort's ecologists a number of times, as I know RSPB have, and Buglife to a slightly lesser extent, and we'd all, I'm sure that I can speak on behalf of the others, we've all been working quite closely together in saying that it's one of the things we raised in our joint representation on the adequacy of the public consultation, in that we didn't feel that the environmental organisations had been consulted sufficiently by the London Resort, and that's something that we did raise jointly, along with a number of other concerns about shortcomings in the information. What else are we doing? Many things. And I guess the only other thing to mention is that we're also starting to work closely with a number of other organisations. We've been speaking with CPRE just this week as well, and they'll obviously bring a whole wealth of knowledge on campaigning, which will sort of really support the sort of coalition that Kent Wildlife Trust, RSPB and Buglife have sort of formed to work on the London Resort. So we'll be obviously registering as an interested party for the examination, and we're hoping to put together some bullet points to support those who also want to register as interested parties but would like some bullets on the sort of what to include from an environmental perspective, and then hopefully working alongside groups such as yourselves in sort of campaigning against the development moving forwards. So I hope that was a decent overview, and I'm glad I could share my slides eventually. And I look forward to any questions at the end.
Thank you so much. That was really, really insightful.
I have to stop sharing now.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There we go. Got it.
Thank you. I'll just get back to. Yeah, that was good to know when the SSSI is expected. So it's end of April. Is that roughly the date?
Oh, we lost Laura.
Oh,
Frozen, Laura.
Can you see me? Oh no. Hello, can you see me now? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
we can see you. We can't hear you. You're frozen.
Am I frozen? Oh no, that's not good. How about now? I'll try and stop my video and I'll come back again. Any better?
Well,
I'll try and restart my video. Can you see me again? Can they not hear me?
Looks like we've lost Laura for a moment.
How do I log out? Because I'll lose the whole thing.
do we have an idea? Is that Laura back? I was going to say, otherwise, any of the other speakers. Did we have an agenda of who
Yeah.
was going when?
So,
Yes.
thank you, Nikki, very much. That was very informative. Our next speaker is Christoph Bull, local historian. Where are you, Christoph? There you are. Hello. Would you like to begin, Christoph?
I will do, and I will try and share my screen, but let's hope we don't have an electronic nervous breakdown. But let's see what happens.
Shall I try and log
you.
back on again?
It's not quite as I like it, but you can all see that, can't you? I know it's not in the big screen.
What I'll do is I'll log back onto my
And
phone.
I don't want to fiddle with it because it will waste too much time. Yes, hello, my name's Christoph Bull. I'm a local historian, amongst other things, and I've been into local history since I was a schoolboy. My whole working life was with the Kent Library Service. But saving Swanscombe Peninsula, the area is seen by some people as another urban-edged, ex-industrial brownfield site of no landscape, natural or local history value, usually by those who have no interest in these matters or have no interest in Swanscombe and Greenhive. And sadly to me, that seems to be many of those who make the decisions. The Swanscombe or Broadness Peninsula is now the last green lung in the immediate locality. Historically, it is of enormous historical and cultural importance. Its location as a floodplain is obviously important. It was a grazing area. It had a ferry that ran at various times from Essex to Bell's Wharf, as well as one to Greenhive. There has been no archaeological dig that I know of, but I suspect the peninsula will reveal hidden treasures that might transform completely our understanding of Swanscombe's history. The picture that you can see by the way in front of you is the 1769 map of this area. In 1888, workmen digging out gravel for the cement works next to Galley Hill School found bones 8 feet down.
Oh, no,
These are identified. These are identified as Galley Hill Man, and initially believed to be Old Stone Age, or about 100,000 years old. Also on the peninsula, near the tip, there was a field known as Gallows Peace. The area, the peninsula, is divided into the salt marshes or creek, subject to tides, and the area behind the flood defence walls to the south was recorded in the 18th century by Edward Hasted, Kentish historian, as being a very unhealthy place because of miasma or unhealthy marsh air. This caused a disease in lots of people in Swanscombe and Greenhive called ague, which was a big problem in Kent and Essex for many marshland parishes. In fact, it was nothing to do with marshland air. It was all to do with mosquitoes. They didn't understand that in the 18th century. They spread the disease because mosquitoes were breeding on the stagnant water that was on the marshes behind the sea wall. In the early 1800s, the whole of the peninsula was bought by the British government, so it was going to be turned into a huge dockyard for the Navy, building and repairing and upgrading of ships of the line. The end of the Napoleonic Wars stopped this before it started, but it led to the whole of the area being sold off by the British, not in one lump like they bought it, but in various plots to various owners. One of these plots was sold off to create what is believed to have been the first modern purpose-built cement factory in the world. Swanscombe, or later White's Cement Works, opened in 1825. As part of this internationally important story of the peninsula came 10 years later, in 1835, the first concrete house in the world, designed by John Baisley White, the cement factory owner, which survived until the idiots demolished it in the mid-1960s. And that stood right on the edge of the peninsula near the entrance to the cement works at Swanscombe Cross. International history continues with a Cold War incident that happened off the tip of the Swanscombe Peninsula in the 1960s, when an East German ship was carrying a load of Leyland buses to Cuba. It sank after a collision, and there are all sorts of conspiracy theories that the CIA was involved in stopping the buses going to Cuba, which of course the USA had, and it does still have, an embargo on Cuba for many things, including modern vehicles. Another internationally important piece of history, like all the others I've mentioned, that happened on the peninsula, was the invention of the sulfite paper making process, which revolutionized all communications in the 1880s. So you'll be thinking to yourself, what the hell's the sulfite process? What's so important? The sulfite process allowed newsprint to be made with inferior but much cheaper paper, which hitherto had been manufactured with expensive, high-quality paper. The sulfite process allowed the working classes to be able to buy newspapers, which were, of course, not only the internet of their day, but probably quite a lot of us on this meeting tonight can remember when they were still the internet of our day. And all that happened in a factory here on the edge of the Swanscombe Peninsula. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to go on too long. I hope that these morsels have given you some idea that the green lung that we are fighting to preserve demands better than being lost under a world of plastic nonsense with a terrible name, London Resort, when it's not even in London, to lose another floodplain and all that that means for the Thames in general, not just Swanscombe. And the proposal hardly fits with a world vision where carbon footprint and the annihilation of wildlife habitats are seen as actions leading ultimately to the extinction of humans. I'm not even going to talk about the infrastructure, and that Swanscombe and Greenhive will not benefit from jobs, as locals will only get the crumbs that fall from the table of the entrepreneurs who know the price of everything and the value of nothing. And if you're interested, this is just a tiny, tiny piece of a full hour-long, fully illustrated talk, which will be available at some time after lockdown is lifted. And the Swanscombe and Greenhive Local History Group will be organising that, and no doubt will advertise it to you all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me again now? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you see me?
We can see you, hear you, Laura.
Yeah.
You can see and hear me?
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Christoph. That's really interesting. I'm sorry about the technical issues there. So, and obviously, where is it you said that would be, more presentation would be done, Christoph?
Swanscombe Greenhive community. I think that's what you said.
Brilliant. So we'll watch out for that.
Sorry, can I say it's the Swanscombe Greenhive Local History Group.
Local history.
And they meet the first Friday of the month, when permitted, at the church centre in Swanscombe Street, Swanscombe. And
fantastic.
And we advertise it. Christoph's the chairman and I'm the secretary. So it will be a good evening. We will advertise it widely.
Oh,
Lesley,
wonderful.
Lesley, is that evening or daytime?
Sorry, 7 o'clock. Starts around 7 o'clock in the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. So definitely look out for that. And so next up, we are going to go over to Mandy Garford from Dartford Clean Air to hear her presentation. Thanks, Mandy.
Hello. I haven't got anything interesting to show you, I'm afraid. You'll have to imagine something. Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to such an important campaign, and not just locally, but the impact of this will be felt on adults, children and animals further away too. One of my favourite sayings is that air pollution has no boundaries. It doesn't stop at a fence, it carries on. It doesn't stop at the border, it carries on. Sorry, I've got a cat here trying to... So just a little background on me. I have 4 children. I'm a full-time teacher in a local school, and I'm the founder of Dartford Clean Air. I became very interested in the local air pollution a few years ago, and discovered that Dartford's air is so bad that we have 4 air quality management areas. I remember feeling very shocked that I actually had no idea that that was the case. I started putting 2 and 2 together. All my children had grown up with childhood asthma, and I was then diagnosed with asthma. I was kind of, okay, you know, there's got to be a link here. I'd never experienced anything like that before. I then began to hear of other people who had similar conditions, and these seemed to be exasperated by the local pollution. I helped Friends of the Earth put up pollution test tubes, diffusion tubes to monitor air locally, especially within close proximity to the M25, and took a keen interest in anything I could. In 2018, our littlest and final addition to the family, at just 6 weeks old, suffered bronchiolitis, severe pneumonia, and a collapsed lung. He was put on life support in a wonderful London hospital where he was looked after by our amazing NHS. And it was one of those quiet evenings, listening to the beeps of the machines that were keeping him alive, that we were chatting to the consultant. And she was talking about where all her patients come from. Far and wide, it would seem. But those with respiratory problems, like our son, were more often from areas of high pollution. The high pollution makes the symptoms more acute and more common. And once again, I was shocked that people don't seem to know this. They don't seem to realise that this pollution, yes, we talk about how bad it is, but it is affecting lives. So I'm very thankful for our now 2-year-old who survived and is doing really well. But it was shortly after that that I set up Dartford Clean Air, as I didn't want anyone else to go through that or worse. Dartford's toxic air is costing lives of all ages. Most of Dartford's air pollution comes from traffic. We monitor this by measuring particulate matter, PM, you kind of see it everywhere, which is a mixture of different materials from a variety of sources. It includes primary particles, so those are released into the atmosphere from a source, and secondary particles formed from chemical reactions and pollutants. Primary PM comes from human-made and natural sources. In the UK, our biggest human-made source comes from stationary fuel combustion, for example, industrial and domestic fuel burning, and transport. Transport is one of the biggest problems that we have in Dartford. We have PM 2.5, which refers to the atmospheric particulate matter that has a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers, sorry, which is about 3% of the diameter of human hair. And these are smaller than PM 10. PM 10 are the particles with a diameter of 10 micrometers, and they're also called fine particles because they're all quite small. It's these really, really fine particles, the PM 2.5, that can travel further because they are smaller, they're so fine, they can even get into your bloodstream and they can affect every single organ in your body. Nationally, we know that 38,000 people die from air pollution every single year. Long-term exposure to air pollution is killing 1 in 19 people in the UK, according to researchers at Centre for Cities. It causes lung disease, lung cancer, heart disease, strokes, and more. They've published their annual study, Cities Outlook, which includes a major focus on toxic air and how it's impacting on city and town dwellers across the UK. The estimates vary significantly depending on location. Obviously, you know, we've talked about if you're in an area of high pollution, then this is going to have a direct impact. And it's estimated that in areas such as London, Slough, Luton, where there is known to be higher pollution, we're looking at 1 in 16 people die from exposure. Researchers say they can now look at air pollution across England, Scotland and Wales in detail like never seen before. This came out quite recently, and they are able to use satellites and artificial intelligence to now look at the levels of pollution. The new technology is so good that scientists can record levels of pollution in each individual square kilometre of the country. They found that the square kilometre with the worst air quality in 2018, so that's the most recent year which data is available, was actually alongside the Dartford Tunnel approach and north of Bean. So we are talking about the worst kilometre in the UK. It's close to Bluewater Shopping Centre and Darren Valley Hospital. Dartford was recorded as having 23 micrograms of pollutants per cubic metre of air throughout the year, which is more than double what the World Health Organization (WHO) recommended guideline of 10. Its position on the major transport axis, obviously you've got the M25 and you've got the A2 and you've got the Channel Ports and Bluewater Shopping Centre, and then we've got this significant housing developments that are, you know, still ongoing, and all of that frequently gridlocks our town. In 2018, data from Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy revealed the traffic pollution increase in Dartford between 2011 and 2016 was almost triple the national average. Figures showed that CO2 emissions from freight and passenger transport rose by 9% in that time, making traffic responsible for 54% of the carbon dioxide released in Dartford in 2016. Every year, Dartford Borough Council have to release a report. So this is from the 2019 Air Quality Management Report by Dartford Borough Council. They, for some reason, haven't put the published the 2020, so we'll go with the 2019. And it revealed that the town has the second highest average daily level of air pollution of all local authorities in South East England. Levels on some days on the A282, which is the Dartford Tunnel approach road, reached 70 micrograms of nitrogen dioxide, NO2, and particulate matter, PM, which is the equivalent of smoking 144 cigarettes a year. Other roads like London Road and the town centre have reached 64 and 56 cubic metre respectively, while the Bean Interchange and Bluewater reached 58. All of these levels are far higher than the World Health Organization guideline, and their limit, of course, is 10. It forms part of a major issue for North Kent and neighbouring boroughs, Medway, Gravesham, which were the 4th and 5th most offenders. The government's environmental bill, launched last year, set out a clear commitment to binding targets for particulate matter. This fell short of the WHO guideline, but comes in at an EU level of 25 micrograms, sorry, which most of the country combined with. So it just shows how poor the level of pollution is in the town of Dartford, and that our residents regularly suffer. Monitored levels of pollution have increased at the majority of sites across the borough. So Dartford have monitoring sites that are all over, and same as Gravesham, they have to do that. And those monitoring sites have breached the annual objective level are already within, have already been declared, sorry, the air quality management areas. Much of the traffic on Dartford's local roads is overspill traffic from major trunk roads. According to the Department of Transport, the crossing was designed to handle 135,000 vehicle movements each day, but it currently is not uncommon to reach 160,000, especially on peak days. When there's an accident or a tunnel closure, which I don't know about you, but that seems to be quite a frequent occurrence, causes absolute gridlock, and it spills out in all directions. You can be stuck in Dartford Town Centre and you're, oh yeah, because the tunnel's closed. Madness. But traffic in Dartford, they're also using it as a hub too. So there's huge logistics operations which have sprung up either side of the Thames. I don't know if you've seen how huge the Amazon building is down by the crossing. Increasing HGV traffic using largely diesel engines moving to and from. There's a rail freight interchange which has also been recently proposed. So in recent years, the local area has been subject to massive increases in residential and commercial development, which is set to continue. This includes over 15,000 new homes and commercial development at Ebbsfleet Garden City. So when you have all of this, you have the perfect storm of a tunnel closure and peak departure traffic from Bluewater Shopping Centre. The entire network can be in gridlock, and you have a high pressure weather system, and pollution hangs like a thick veil over the town, which is sat geographically in a bowl created by the River Thames. We have trouble. So we have the 112 million overhaul, 112 million pound overhaul, and for the Bean interchange, and that is to create more capacity for more traffic. That's for another 20,000 homes that have been proposed. But again, we know that if there's more traffic, there's going to be more pollution. It's just going to increase. A traffic forecasting study by Aircom in a Highways England report showed that by 2041, entry flows to the A2 Bean junctions in the morning and afternoon peak periods would increase by 50 and 60% compared to 2014. So that's when the data was taken. So if you think about how it is now and think about another 50%. Okay, so it's also suggesting that when all the housing is finished, that could go up to 200%. So looking up into the future, air quality could improve significantly for the people of Dartford with electric vehicles. Alex may have something to say about this in a bit. But with the best will in the world, even with electric vehicles and significant investment, even, you know, if we piled everything into it, we're talking a decade away before that made any kind of significant impact. It's worth noting here that Dartford Borough Council only monitor PM10, so they're the heavier particles, and it's the PM25, which are the really fine particles, which get right up into the air and into the bloodstream. And yeah, I'll leave that. I'm worried I'm waffling now.
Oh, Mandy, that was, I mean, thank you so much for sharing those, I mean, really sobering statistics with us. Yeah, it's actually quite unbelievable how terrible the air pollution is, and that's before the possibility of all this extra traffic with a theme park. So yeah, I believe that Alex is going to talk more about the increase of traffic the theme park could well bring to the area. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us, Mandy. So now actually we'll move on to Alex Hills from CPRE to share his presentation.
Thank you, Laura. I'm Alex Hills. I'm chairman of CPRE Kent Brasham District, and I head up a very good, hard-working committee. When the plans were first announced, CPRE Kent took the position of being a critical friend of the project, but as more details emerged, this position changed to being fully against it. As they are promising so many jobs, we are facing an uphill fight to stop this monstrosity. However, nothing is impossible, and the more different groups work together, the greater the chance of success we have. CPRE Kent has concerns over transport, ecology, air and light pollution, impact on local businesses, and impact on local residents. We have years of experience dealing with the DCO applications, and we are happy to share this knowledge. Tonight, I'm going to focus on transport, as this is one of our best hopes of stopping the development along with ecology. At the first meeting we had with London Resort, we told them that if their transport plan was not viable, the park would fail, as people would only sit in traffic for ages once. With social media being so prevalent, word of bad experiences travelled fast. The current plan is not viable, as it is too car dependent. It's important to view the transport plan in the context of the whole area, as this enables the full impact of the development to be understood. This is not going to please people living in Dartford, but the new Lower Thames crossing will not solve the problems at the Dartford crossing. To do that, the outdated tunnels need replacing, which are the main cause of congestion for northbound traffic. The new Amazon warehouse opening in August on the old Littlebrook Power Station site will add to the congestion at the Dartford crossing. To pick up on Mandy's point, EVs, electric vehicles, still emit high levels of PM2.5 from the brakes and tyres. The reason they have high emissions from the brakes and tyres is that they're actually heavier than the fossil fuel equivalent. The Lower Thames Crossing DCO will not come in until at least April, and maybe a lot later, due to the strong legal challenge by the Brilliant Transport Action Network. The two DCO applications clashing has never happened before, so it is important to understand the details of both applications. The Lower Thames Crossing will see the loss of 2 lanes in each direction where the new road joins the A2 at Cobham. This will cause tailbacks at peak times to at least the Bean interchange, even without the theme park. The Bean interchange changes, I refuse to call it an upgrade, as it is so poorly designed, it will increase congestion and air pollution in the area. It will create a pinch point on the A2 due to the new slip road on the coastbound side and a T-junction where Watling Street joins the A2. This will increase congestion on this already very busy section of the A2. As with the Dartford crossing approach roads, there are too many junctions close together on the A2 between the M25 and Pepper Hill junctions. This section of the A2 is already at 110% capacity, with the Garden City still to be built and many other developments about to be built. When a car brakes in heavy traffic, the one behind brakes a little harder, and so on, until the traffic comes to a standstill for no apparent reason. This effect is called a shock wave and happens often where slip roads meet a dual carriageway. This is another reason for the congestion at Dartford Approach Road and at the A2, as these sections have so many junctions so close together. Highways England's incompetence is only matched by its arrogance, so would urge you to take anything not to take anything they say at face value. Remember, it is an international and national proven fact that building new roads increases congestion. If you don't believe me, I would recommend that you read the CPRE report, End of the Road. We have been supporting Canix, the tram line project, for many years. The line will link Gravesend, Ebbsfleet and Grays in Essex, and quite possibly beyond, via a tunnel under the Thames. The project, if handled right, has the potential to reduce the impact on the local area of the theme park should it be built. Investing in active and sustainable transport is the only way to reduce congestion on our roads. And this is why I'm pleased members of the cycling forum here, because making the theme park accessible for walking and cyclists, hopefully people who have jobs locally, is important, and maintaining existing routes across the site is also important. The numbers given for sustainable travel do not add up in the project. The speeds given for people to get on and off are quicker than those for getting out of a burning plane, which is ridiculous. Developments have consistently over the years overestimated the modal shift from road to bus. Part of the reason for this is not enough effort has gone into making the bus option the better option. People are reluctant to give up their cars to get on the bus, but are far more willing to give up their cars to get on a tram for some reason. Trams are faster and cleaner than buses. The transport plan does not make sustainable transport the easiest and cheapest way to access the fun fair, so people will use the cars. There is a big question mark over the long-term impact of the pandemic on work patterns. Before the nightmare started, home working was increasing. It is possible the unsustainable amount of new housing being imposed on Kent by the government would offset any increase in people working from home. But it is also possible that people will want to travel more after being restricted for so long. This makes the ability of rail lines and stations to cope with the increase in passenger numbers proposed by the theme park, which bring, at best, very questionable. Anyone who has travelled by rail at peak times knows how unpleasant experience it can be. It's not how I would want to spend my leisure time. We are part of the alliance that is fighting the application on ecology grounds. We are proud to have signed the letter drafted by Bug Life and others, and I'm wearing the Bug Life t-shirt tonight. If the project is uneconomically unviable is not grounds to have the application refused. Given the lack of success many theme parks are having before the pandemic, I am personally surprised people are investing in it. Should the worst happen and the project go ahead, it is important that the impact on residents and business is reduced as much as possible. The very best way of doing this is to highlight every flaw in the project. We support local firms fight for proper compensation. Ideally, the developers should be required to find alternative premises at the same price the existing residents are paying. It's important when applying to take part in the next stage of the DCO process that every possible thing you and your organisation might want to comment on is put in the registration and relevant representation form statement. If you miss anything off, you will not be able to comment on it. This needs to include items that you might want to support another group on. You only have 500 words, but you do not have to give details or justify your points. Remember, at 23:59. I think it's worth quoting at this stage from the Planning Inspectorate website. Pre-examination. At this stage, the public will be able to register with the Planning Inspectorate to become an interested party by making a relevant registration. A relevant representation is a summary of a person's views on the application made in writing. An examining authority is also appointed at the pre-examination stage, and all the interested parties will be invited to attend a preliminary meeting run and chaired by the examining authority. Although there is no statutory timescale for this stage of the process, it usually takes approximately 3 months from the applicant's formal notification and publicity of an expected application. Finally, CPRE is willing to work with any group opposed to this fun fair, as together we are stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That was really, concerning. Again, in terms of the transport that we all do. Living in Dartford and Swanscombe, we all know that the gridlock we face on a regular basis is already horrendous. So, and also really helpful points in the DCO process, and that will be gone into further on in the discussion. So thank you. Let me come on to my notes. So last but not least, we have Lesley Howes to share her opinion on the London Resort project.
Hi, thank you. I'm Lesley. I live in, well, Stone, but it's sort of Greenhithe. I'm a relative newcomer to the area. I've only been here 20 years, which is a drop in the ocean when you talk to some of the other residents, but it was the best move I ever made. I came from South London and really settled here well. And like many of my friends and fellow residents, this last year has given me the opportunity to enjoy and appreciate the uniqueness of Swanscombe Peninsula, and I don't want to lose it. And this isn't a case of NIMBYism, because if I truly thought that the theme park would be a good thing for the area and improve the life of locals, I wouldn't be here. So why do I feel so protective of what we at home here call the marshes? This last year, the marshes have become a place of escape, one of the few surviving green spaces left in our area. An area that has gradually become subsumed with houses. Houses that, if they are lucky, have a small yard, hardly worthy of the name of garden. And recent research has shown that the availability of green spaces is very important for mental and physical well-being. In our area, green spaces are at a premium. Walking over the marshes is an escape from suburbia. In the summer, last summer, we heard cuckoos and the frogs were amazing, the noise of them. There were even sightings of seals in the water. And in the winter, we have experienced amazing sunrises and sunsets. And if we're lucky, the other morning I saw some curlews and other overwintering birds. And I think every one of us has become a twitcher. And I'm just beginning. So I've got a very small list of birds that I can actually recognise, but it's all down to having the marshes there. And as I understand it, the two areas of marsh, Botany Marsh and Black Duck Marsh, will be divided by the development, effectively stopping migration of species and increasing competition for resources in both areas, damage that is very difficult to remediate. And I'm not a professional, I'm just me. When looking for a site suitable for a theme park, and this was probably back in 2004, 11 sites were considered in, I think, the southeast, and all except Swanscombe Peninsula were rejected. And in the report that is attached to the submission, it said under land use, and this was in 2004, the assessment report for the peninsula stated the site is currently unused other than for boat moorings and a few communication installations, and used informally by walkers. And under the environmental constraints, it noted that the area does not contain any international or national wildlife or heritage designations, except for a nearby SSSI, and that they're referring to the Heritage Park in Swanscombe, where the Paleolithic remains were found. So from this report, it seemed to the theme park that it was perfect for development. We now know that the marshes contain some rare habitats, and we've really been reinforced by our first speaker. The number of invertebrates and other plants is amazing. And one of them, my favourite, is the home of the distinguished jumping spider. And this is not any old jumping spider, because there are quite a few of them. But ours is the distinguished jumping spider. And I thought, if this was the exotic habitat of tigers or pandas, David Attenborough and his colleagues would be very vocal on the issue and campaigning for its protection. Unfortunately, a spider doesn't have quite the same zing to it. The lack of consideration for the ecology in the proposals for the theme park has been raised, as we've heard this evening, by BugLife, Wildlife, Kent Wildlife, and other concerned organisations. And these people know what they're talking about, and I'm very concerned. We know the marshes are not all about wildlife. And Christoph has eloquently told us the brief outline of the history. The remains of Swanscombe's industrial heritage are much in evidence, and they may not be pretty, but neither are the remains of the atomic research station at Alford Ness on the east coast. Alford Ness has a long tradition of defence from Napoleonic times up until mid-20th century. And when it was sold by the Ministry of Defence to the National Trust in the mid-90s, I think, and it's now a national nature reserve with quite high status. The industrial heritage of Swanscombe marshes should be celebrated, not buried under a theme park. We've heard that the large number of businesses not mentioned in the original site assessment and which offer employment to local people, these are to go. Where to? No one appears to have an answer. There's not much spare space around. In their defence, the London resort proposals promote the idea of many thousands of jobs for many local people. Not that many, judging by the 500 hostel-type accommodation that is going to be built. This is sort of hostel accommodation with 4 or 5 rooms, like student accommodation. So that's about 2,000 people they're going to bring into the area. And I thought, we've heard this all before, haven't we, about jobs for local people. Think about the Garden City development, which talked of jobs for local people. But judging by the number of white vans that daily use London Road and are parked on the streets of our town, there's not many local people being employed. Another argument used to persuade us that the development is a good thing is that it will bring trade to businesses in the high street. I'm not sure how this will work when we are being told that there will be a minimum impact from increased visitor traffic. Visitors, we're assured, will be ferried directly to the park from train, bus, river or car park. No opportunity to pop into the local cafe, the pub, the co-op or the chippy then. And anyone who visits Legoland, Thorpe Park or Alton Towers, how many local shops did they use? The theme parks are a destination to visit and then leave. Another idea that is used to tempt local residents is that an entertainment venue is just what we want. Well, lovely, if we can afford it, and I'm only guessing here, because I'm not really in touch with these things, but it will probably cost a family of 4 at least £100 to visit the attractions. London theatre prices to see a show, and you get the picture. This is not a cheap day out. Then when you consider light pollution, noise pollution, air pollution, The more I think about it, the less attractive the idea becomes. And then just to conclude, thinking about what legacy will the development leave us? I don't know what the life expectancy of the project is, but when it shuts down, what will it leave behind? Another brownfield site ready for even more houses. So on behalf of existing and future residents, I say every neighbourhood needs open spaces, even more than ever, for our mental and physical well-being. We don't need manufactured entertainment complexes, especially on Swanscombe Peninsula. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lesley. Hearing that from a local perspective, there's so many reasons, isn't there, that it shouldn't go ahead. And I think as well that the thing that frustrates me is the greenwashing that's going on from London Resort, saying if we build on a marshland, we'll somehow increase the biodiversity. Like you're saying, once it's built on, that's it, it's gone, and the rest of the animals that can remain will be dispersed from the noise and air pollution. So thank you, that's really fantastic. And I'm so sorry, I missed out Stuart Ray. He's going to be speaking as well, and he's a local business owner, and he's going to talk about the impact on his businesses. Thanks, Stuart.
Hi there all. Just based at Swanscombe now. I've been here for 6 years now. It took us 3 years to actually find this place. I actually live in Greenhive. So I'll read this little statement here. So we've been leasing Unit 16 since 2015. The size and value of the unit cannot be found in the surrounding areas. Moving in, we've spent thousands of pounds upgrading the suite to exact needs. We've installed gas central heating, have upgraded the electrics, installed extraction system, built internal offices, workshops and mezzanine floors. We're a very specialised business and use heavy machinery, so had to upgrade the three-phase circuit board. It's taken a lot of time, money and effort to reach the stage where we are now. Most of our clients and many of our suppliers are based in London, and being able to reach them and them to reach us in 30 minutes makes our position unique. It certainly contributes to keeping our client base on board. Moving further out and being located in a more remote location would certainly pose many issues. Being able to offer quick turnaround to our London-based clients will certainly be much harder if we have to if we are further away from the Ebbsfleet station and the A2. The location means that many of our London-based clients are able to visit us whenever they like. We have looked at the surrounding area for suitable units to relocate, and they just don't exist. Whilst there are many industrial units in the area, they do not offer anything for a small business. Our current unit is 650 square feet, and we certainly would require anything larger than 1,000 square feet. If you enter search requirements as light industry and under 1,000 feet on commercial property sites, it always draws a blank. We have apprentices that live locally, and we would not be able to travel too far. Would not be able to travel too far as they do not drive. It is important that they are able to complete their training with us. As I mentioned, we are very small, specialised business, and my apprentices cannot complete their training with anyone else. Also, I don't always have access to a car, and at present I can walk to work or cycle. Having to travel will add time and costs to an already busy life. We're a small family-run business with a small turnover, and we try to keep costs to a minimum and run at a small profit. An increase in overheads would be extremely detrimental. Having to relocate would be significantly strain on our business. Due to the pandemic, any profit that has been available has been eaten up by the costs. It is only due to grants and furlough that we've been able to survive. It would take weeks and be extremely expensive to set up the shop at a new unit, and any big break in being and another big break in being unable to deliver to our clients and could be fatal to our business. We have a lot of heavy machinery, and as well as safes and chemicals that would be required specialist help to move. I truly believe that this would be impossible to replicate what we have now. Moving would have a huge financial impact on our business, and we're just one of 140 units that will have to relocate, and there is no business. There's not enough units around here to sort of help us on this. I mean, I'd have to move 10 miles from here, which would then, it's a 20-mile round trip a day, 100 miles a week, and then it's the environmental impact for us and the costs. A lot of business do employ local people. I mean, when we've put any improvements into the workshop, we've always used local businesses. So we all support ourselves. So this huge development will not be supported by myself, and they won't be hiring locally. They've already said, someone said earlier, they're building 500 homes. That won't be for local people. The businesses here in Swanscombe Business Centre, there's 17 of us. We employ approximately 170 people. I've already spoken to a few of them, and they said if they have to relocate, the local people they employ won't be able to move with them. And that is what the impact is. So the local jobs will go. And what you've got to think about as well, the jobs that will be created will be low paid jobs, which won't suit the buildings and the houses and the mortgages people are going to have to pay. And just think to yourself, 5-10 years ago, you'd go into Asda's or into McDonald's and you'd see somebody, you'd be served by somebody on a tip. Go in there now, you've got your self-checkouts, your little computer screens to put your menus in. That will happen down at this park. I know it will be. And that's my biggest thing. We employ locally, and we will always continue to work with our local community to keep it going and keep it thriving. Okay. Very short and sweet.
Thank you, Stuart. I mean, it's really devastating to hear of the loss of livelihoods, local decent jobs been around. I imagine businesses have been around for a long time, for generations. And the thing that frustrates me is it's not just the greenwashing from the London Resort, it's also the jobs washing. We're going to create all these thousands and thousands of jobs, but what are the quality of them? Are they local? Are they seasonal? It's what they're taking away that I don't think people are as aware of. So that's really helpful. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just moving this along. So, sorry, my mouse is being a bit of a pain. Right, so now we're going to be beginning our Q&A submission. We've had pre-submitted questions. Thank you for everyone who sent them in to us. First up, we have a couple of questions for Nicky. Nicky, would you like me to read them out, or will you just sort of go ahead and summarise? How would you like to do it?
I don't mind, but whatever you prefer.
Okay. Well, if I read them out then. So the first one comment really was from Kerry Hood. So she said, it's good to see that the RSPB are on board. As they have more experience proposing large projects like this, have they any advice, and can they promote the campaign through media?
Okay, so well, whilst I can't speak on behalf of RSPB, I think when it comes to promoting the campaign through media, I believe that we've got a couple of the representatives from the local RSPB groups. So whether Sue Healy or Ralph Todd might be able to elaborate on that a bit further, I'm not sure. From a Kent Wildlife Trust perspective, I know, so I've been working closely with our comms team, with our communications team, who run our social media pages, and so I know we've shared the sort of open letter to the BBC that was shared through Kent Wildlife Trust social media channels. And we will always be more than happy to support messaging around the environmental impacts of the London Resort, as long as these are sort of aligning with the messages that that we as Kent Wildlife Trust are saying, which I'm sure they will be. We're always very happy to support local groups, and likewise really value the support that we get from yourselves as well. And so I guess when it comes to advice on dealing with and opposing large projects such as this, I think you have to forgive me, I forgot who it was who said these exact words earlier, but I think we're sort of stronger together at the moment. We're particularly with London Resort. I think we've got a really good, really good community group. We've got a really good group of environmental organisations. So ourselves, so Kent Wildlife Trust, RSPB and Buglife have been working really closely from the outset. All three organisations have been involved in a vast number of large development projects before, and are working on things like the Lower Thames Crossing as well. So we're able to bring across sort of knowledge from those other projects and bring them to the London Resort, and share that knowledge ourselves. And so if there's any support that we can provide to the group as a collective, then please always do ask. But I do think that we're sort of particularly lucky to be able to work with and talk to CPRE on this as well, because they do bring a whole wealth of sort of experience in campaigning against these national infrastructure projects. So I think sort of as a team, we've got some really good experience behind us. In terms of any advice to give right now, it would be to make sure, as we've heard already, to register as an interested party, making sure that you cover all of the points that you'll want to raise in future. And like I said, we'll look at putting together some bullet points that can be sent out, which will cover sort of the headline biodiversity points, that I think we'll try and look at doing that as a joint venture from Kent Wildlife Trust, Buglife and RSPB. So it will represent what all three of us will be saying, in the hope that then we'll all be able to streamline our messages to have the most impact. So we'll look at trying to get those out over the next week or so. And hopefully that's of use.
That's really, thank you, that's really helpful. And like you say, we're definitely stronger together. So thank you very much. So I'm just realised we've got lots of questions. Was there any particular one? I don't know if we'll be able to get all of them this evening. I don't know, was there a particular one from the questions I sent you that you wanted to answer? I'm just thinking of the other guests who have questions.
Sure. I think maybe if I very briefly mention about the term brownfield site that's used for Swanscombe.
So this was Sandra Applegate who had a question about the brownfield and sort of the significance of that. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So the reason I thought that this one might be useful is because I think that the term brownfield does cause some confusion almost. So it's a term that's sort of being used quite a lot by the London Resort Company in their application and in their media. And as I said, it does create this view that it is a site that's devoid of wildlife, and we know that that is absolutely not the case. The line that we sort of have to take on this is that yes, it is previously developed land, it is previously used land, but it has now developed such special wildlife features that it no longer meets the strict definition of brownfield that's used in the planning system, but instead it now meets this criteria of being a wildlife rich brownfield site, and they are two very different things. And the importance of these wildlife rich brownfield sites has been recognised by the inclusion of a really long, complicated name. It's called Open Mosaic Habitat on Previously Developed Land. And that is a really long-winded name for these wildlife-rich brownfield sites. And that's been included as a priority habitat, which is afforded some level of protection, but not enough. And that's why we're really pushing for the designation of the site as a site of special scientific interest on the basis of the quality and quantity of the open mosaic habitat and the vast numbers and nationally important invertebrate species found there. So hopefully that can provide some level of clarity and sort of reassurances on just because it's referred to as a brownfield site by the London Resort in their application doesn't mean that it's of any lesser value in terms of its environmental value in the planning system.
Yes, thank you. I think it's very misleading, isn't it? I think a lot of people are sort of confused by the term brownfield, and but it's actually one of the most unique areas for biodiversity in the UK, isn't it? So
it is, yeah, particularly in terms of wildlife-rich brownfield habitats. It is the most important site in the UK. So.
Well, thank you, Nicky. Okay, so we also have a question for Christoph Bull. I note that Swanscombe and Springhead had Romani settlements. Should there not be some sort of dig going on around Swanscombe Cross? So, if you wouldn't mind, any insight on that, please, Christopher?
Christoph, yes. Well, I think the person who sent that in has confused me slightly. Does he mean Roman or does he mean Romany? I've no idea. There are no Roman sites that we know of on the peninsula. The important thing is to say that we know of.
That might be a misspelling from me. Who was it who sent this?
But if it's Romany, yes, we've got some history about in the past gypsies camping out on parts of the peninsula. But the person I know asked about Roman roads. As far as I know, there are none. And as far as Swanscombe Cross is concerned, well, it's not on the peninsula. So the answer to the question is yes. A dig is probably worth doing anywhere in Swanscombe, but actually it's irrelevant for tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry if that is a mix-up there, but we're not going to have time to answer all the questions. So at the end of this, if you have any issues, just let us know and we'll get back to you. Thank you, Christoph, not Christopher. Sorry. And next up for Mandy, we have a question about air pollution. So are there limits to air, light and sound pollution that we can use against the development of London resorts? Thank you.
So this is a bit of a tricky one. There are limits that are set down by the EU, there are guidelines, and these really are set. They would, when they're planning, obviously the London Resort know that the limits are high, or the levels are high in the area. So in their planning, they would put in mitigating strategies to cope with that. So they would say, okay, right, well, we're going to use the river, so we'll limit traffic. We're going to put money into making it better. So they'll kind of try and mitigate what they know is coming up. And then, of course, we all know that when those levels are exceeding, that it then becomes another area management quality. Oh my goodness, area quality. You know, one of them. And then the council then just monitoring the
area. Sorry, isn't it?
Thank you. It's been a really long day.
I know, it's a mouthful.
So then it's just a case of monitoring. So it's this constant monitoring, and then putting in strategies, and they'll say, yeah, well, we're doing this, and they'll say, well, it's still exceeding, so they'll put in more strategies. So it's not quite as simple, as far as I know, as sort of being able to say or take them to court. And at that point, really, it's too late. It's here.
Yeah, and obviously we don't need, we already have 4 in the area. We don't want another air quality management area, if avoided. Thank you, Mandy. So next up, we have a question for Alex Hills. I'm actually going to choose one of these. Sorry, again, we'll send out the questions to the guests and ask. We'll get a reply out to everyone who submitted a question. So it's Alistair Back. Has spoken about the alternative use. Can consideration be given to the peninsula to become a sustainable energy generator for Ebbs Fleet? So wind, tide or solar? And yeah, so over to you, Alex, if you've got any insight to that. Thank you.
A simple answer to that question is tidal, that would need permission from the Port of London Authority, because the river's their responsibility, as the same with Barrier at Greenwich. In terms of solar, I don't want to see any development on the peninsula. I would like it to see protected as a SSSI wildlife site. There's some scope for wind turbines, but then the wind turbines interfere with the birds, and I would expect the OSPB would have concerns with it. It would have been far better if the Garden City had included micro power generation as part of the development, which would have been a lot better way of doing it. But I think all of us should aim to try and protect the peninsula as a wildlife haven, which it is. And I think that would be that one. Solar panels, the best place for them is on industrial buildings. You know, there's miles and miles of warehouse roofing that could be used for the solar panels. You know, let's not take up our precious green spaces for solar panels.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. And let me just see if we've got another question here. Oh, so for Stuart and potentially Mark Warnett may elaborate on this one. So do we know, if only roughly, how many existing job losses we're potentially facing? By that, I don't necessarily mean business as such, although that would be good to know. I largely mean individual job losses. And that was submitted by Karen Lynch. Sorry, I've missed some of the names of some of these. So over to you, Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, like what I've done, I've actually gone round to the 17 units where we are. I mean, we've got an osteopath where we are, and he relies on local people for his business. So if he moves, he could lose his job or who he employs. We've got car mechanics here. You know, again, it's finding somewhere else to go. I mean, someone's asked, is London Resort supplying any other business centres? No, they're not. They're just saying, that's it, off you go. One of the companies here, they've said they actually employ local people, and if they move, obviously they can't move in a 2 or 3 mile radius. Those people won't be able to follow them, and that's it. So, you know, we don't know exactly how many job losses, but there is potential to be a percentage from my point of view. So, yeah.
Thank you, Stuart. I am mindful of the time. So, I mean, I have accounts that you can stay on as long as we want, but I know there's some people might need to head off at 9. But I don't know if, Mark, you wanted to add to that at all?
Yes, just say the Federation of Small Businesses have written into London Resort, and they estimate, I mean, I can't corroborate their estimates, but they sound realistic, that there's 2,500 existing jobs relating to those 140 businesses, and they estimate there's 2,500 jobs supported indirectly by those businesses. It's just worth pointing out that those businesses, 140 businesses, not Stuart's, I think, because I think that the Swanscombe Business Centre wasn't included in the original plan until a later stage, but most of the businesses have been under the threat of CPO since 2014, when the Secretary of State first designated it as a nationally significant infrastructure project. And so they've been blighted since 2014, so it's been undermining confidence and inward investment by those jobs, by those local businesses. And this is, I do this as a day job, compulsory purchase. I think this is the biggest commercial, compulsory purchase commercial relocation since the London Olympics. So it is a really big deal. And as Stuart says, I'm dealing with regeneration schemes across East London and into Kent. And because of competition from housing and conversion of commercial premises to residential because of the housing pressure, there is a desperate shortage of suitable premises in this part of the world. So I would speculate that most of the businesses affected, a majority, will not be able to relocate and will either they'll either extinguish or change so significantly that they won't be recognisable as the same sort of businesses as they were. So it's a big deal. These are actual jobs, not hypothetical jobs.
Thank you. It's very sad to think the livelihoods that might be lost. So I'm actually going to bring the poll that was at the end, I'm going to bring forward, and then perhaps we'll have a little bit at the end for anyone who wants to stay on a bit longer. But if not, I know that people might be wanting to leave. So Laura, I'm going to pass over to you to just explain about the poll and get that done now, so we can quickly hear feedback from everyone before we finish, before some people might have to leave.
Hi, yeah, that's fine. So I'm just going to put the link in the chat again. So if you could please visit slido.com or click on the links that I've put in the chat and type in the code 34502, then you should see a poll. And so what we're asking, so in order to kind of influence the next stages of communication of this campaign, we're looking at the messaging that we use. So we want to consider the effects that the London resort development will have, and there's 5 listed there. So if you could just click on the 2 that you think will be the most problematic for you, and that's a live poll. So as you vote, you should be able to see your results, your answers coming in.
Doesn't seem to be working, unfortunately, Laura.
Is it not?
No.
Oh, I've managed to do that one.
I've managed to do it as well.
Oh, maybe it's better on the. I logged on.
Yeah, I logged in through Slido.
Maybe if you log in through slido.com and then put the code.
I clicked on the link and mine's working.
Oh, do you know what? I've just noticed that where I put the link, I think the text is taken the text. Yeah. Hang on. So let's just change that.
It says there's no active polls at the moment. Check again later.
Oh, mine's
That's
working.
what I've got.
Yeah, mine's working. That's strange,
Okay,
isn't
so
it?
I'll tell you what, instead of clicking on the link, if on a browser you just go to slido.com.
Yeah, I think that works.
Mine works okay.
I'm in now. Slido.com, and then you enter the code.
Sorry. I can't see on. I've got an iPad and I just can't see anything.
You have to enter the code as well. Not
yes.
Oh right, because it just says or enter the code. Okay.
Yeah.
Where do I? Oh.
Try again.
It was really hard to choose, Laura. I wanted to tick on all of them because.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I'd like to have the choice.
Yeah, it just shows how many issues there are, doesn't it? Really, I think that's what it's highlighted as well.
Yeah. So don't worry if you can't vote. We've got a few votes coming in now. It doesn't matter if not everybody votes. I'm sorry if you can't access it, but it's just an indication of the most popular, the highest concerns. Just for anyone who can't see it, the question is, which two of these consequences of the London resort development are most concerning for you? And the options are biodiversity loss, habitat destruction, job losses, air pollution, and traffic congestion. And based on the most two popular, that'll probably, like I say, influence the direction of the messaging as we try and communicate the campaign. So had a few votes in now. So the most popular two that are coming through are quite clearly habitat destruction and biodiversity loss. So thank you for everyone who's voted.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was really interesting way of allowing everyone who's come along to put their perspective across on that. Sorry. Right, so where are we up to on here? Let's have a little look. I feel like a couple of people have left now, so it was just really the summary at the end. So the next steps, we'll talk briefly about the next steps for our Save Swanscombe Peninsula campaign group. So I feel that Mark sort of updated us. We've had some updates on the DCO process and the potential designation for as triple SI. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate that on that at all, Mark, to sort of tell people what part of the process we're at. Thank you.
Yeah, so with Swanscombe, London Resort have made a DCO application, Development Consent Order application, which is basically an application for, it's a special planning process for what are called nationally significant infrastructure projects. And it grants all compulsory purchase powers and planning permission and all that sort of thing. And it's approximately an 18-month process from application, which happened, I think it was the 31st of December 2020, through to a Secretary of State's decision 18 months later. And in the meantime, the Planning Inspectorate hold what's called an examination in public, and they consider all sorts of public policy issues like environment planning, air quality, jobs, socioeconomics, and they will look into all of those different things. And as other people have said, there's an opportunity for anybody who's got an interest to register on the Planning Inspectorate website as a as an interested party and make a relevant representation, which is initially 500 words, but then there are opportunities later to expand and put more detail on what your representation is. And we will be preparing a representation for the group, which will issue a draft on Facebook. As you can imagine, we will be in opposition to the scheme for the reasons that we've discussed this evening. So yeah, the final date for getting those representations in is the 31st of March, and then the examination will start, and well, shortly afterwards the examination will start. It's a predominantly written procedure, but there are also hearings where oral evidence can be given, and the Planning Inspectorate will invite who they think to be the most significant interested parties and local authorities and statutory consultees to have their say. 3 months before Secretary of State's decision, the Planning Inspectorate make a recommendation to the Secretary of State based on what they think should happen, whether it should be a rejection or an approval. And then the Secretary of State makes a decision. There have been about 100 development consent orders in total since it first came in about 2008, and most of them have been approved. It is a mechanism that is designed to deliver infrastructure quickly, but that is not to say that it definitely will be approved. And recently there have been a number of notable examples where either Planning Inspectorate have recommended refusal and then the Secretary of State has proceeded anyway, but then the Secretary of State's decision has been overturned by judicial review, i.e. the decision has been found by the courts to be unlawful. And that is, there's an extremely interesting and potentially relevant parallel with what's going on at Manston Airport at the moment, where a community group organised a crowdfunded judicial review, and the Secretary of State has had to quash their decision. That they might come again with the same decision, but you know, it's a question of if we think that the Secretary of State has made a rogue decision, and on the evidence the DCO should not have been approved, it's not all over, and there are opportunities to hold the government to account. It just needs money. But I think in terms of what we're doing next, we will be drafting and making relevant representation, and then seeking to get as involved as we possibly can in the examination process to make sure that, you know, that local people's views get represented, and working with us to try and stop this thing.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, that's very helpful. And once we get the what we're going to put in as an objection on Facebook, I think that'd be really helpful for people. And also, Nicky was saying that you're going to do bullet points for the environmental perspective. So I think that's, I mean, it's quite daunting as a layman to write something like this. So I think that'd be really helpful for everyone. And we have, unfortunately, Donna's a little bit poorly. She's heading our campaign as well. So I think we'll write more about her involvement with the campaign, and some vlogging that's going to be coming up. We'll put that on the Facebook page. What else have we got coming up? Let's have a look. Yeah, I think that's most of what we're doing. We've got some craftivism activities up and coming. So, I mean, if you want to keep update, if you don't already follow our Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram, and we also have a website, please follow that, and we'll keep everyone updated about the campaign. So really, I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's spoken tonight. It's been really powerful and insightful. Thank you for everyone who's come along to watch and taken the time to join us. And as Alex and Nicky have both said, we really do need to remain united in the fight against this development from going ahead.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. And do watch out for the full-blown talk. Thanks.
Yes, we will. And also, can we see your T-shirt quickly, Stuart? No, Alex, wasn't it? Bug Life.
Alex has got one. Bug's Life.
I need to see this. See?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute, Alex.
Let me just
sorry, I put you on the spot now.
into my camera in a sec. Let me do it. No, it needs to be up to.
It's okay. Is it the spider one?
I just need to adjust my camera. Hang on a sec.
Okay, it's worth the wait, I'm sure.
There you go.
Oh,
I love that.
I want one.
Amazing.
And I believe that's sustainable cotton, and it's because I don't try not to buy too many new things, but I think from what I've heard, it's a eco top as well. So yeah.
It's a very, very high quality garment.
Beautiful, suits you.
I don't normally pay about 20 quid for a t-shirt, but it's a really nice cotton shirt.
Yeah, it will last you.
Yeah.
Hopefully as long as the marshes. So okay.
Thank you very much, I must admit,
Laura,
it looks a bit
well
scary.
I know a few people who have actually got scared by it. Yes.
Yes, it's a bit scary looking.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be putting up the recording on Facebook. Yeah. So
thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great meeting.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye, Linda. Oh, you're there still. Going.
Hello.
Hello.